The other part of don't wait for yourself is don't wait for the promotion to do it. Do it so that you're ready for when the promotion comes around, and do it so that the leadership opportunity will come to you, because other leaders in the business will go, well, look at that person there. Their level's improved on this and this category of what we're trying to learn and achieve. And then on top of that, be demanding. So the next tip would be demanding of your leader, your boss, your immediate line manager. Don't let them get away with not showing you everything that they know and trying to learn more the right way without upsetting them. You should be demanding of the bosses so you can get ahead that way.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Mindshift show. I'm very excited about today's guest. I have known him since the beginning of the pandemic, and it's been absolutely a privilege to see him throughout the years. I've had many conversations with him about leadership development, life in general, and what makes people successful. Today, without further ado, Mr. Chris Browne all the way from the UK. Chris, welcome.
Thank you, Rocio. Nice to see you again.
Nice to see you again. Now, we've had a lot of conversations about leadership development. Give us some background about you. How did you get to where you're at today?
Okay, so I'm a career retailer. I spent my career working in retail. Started out briefly in banking, but that wasn't for me. And I helped to co-create a global brand, Ted Baker. So a fashion brand with 500 stores around the world, valuation of about 1.7 billion, big success. It's had some trouble since, but that's since I left the business. And even from my very earliest days, I suppose I behaved myself like a leader, and we can perhaps explore what that really means. But I tended to take control of any situation that I was in. But I'd also see that other people didn't necessarily do so. So I had an interest in that whole aspect of life, business, leadership, life generally. I used to lead the school classroom, the football teams, whatever I was involved in. So I don't want to say it came completely naturally to me, because I do think we all have to learn. But I naturally took that role, and then probably over the years had to layer on the learnings that went with it. So now I've led very big teams, 3,500 people working for me globally, 24 direct reports, very different cultural styles to have to cope with. So I worked in China, Japan, West Coast of America, the East Coast of America. Those two are very different, and different nationalities all over Europe and around the world. So, yeah, but in a nutshell, I'm a career retailer, and leadership and management skills is a big part of what I do.
Wow, that's amazing, Chris. When we were talking about, there may be some things that you're natural at, whether it's communicating, even leadership, right? We've all managed ourselves and our life and expectations.
And we don't.
Or we don't, and that's why we're where we're at, right? But the most important thing is everything is learnable, and we must constantly continue to evolve inside of our careers if we're leading others, which leads me to the first question right here, Chris. Where are you seeing the greatest performance gaps in mid-level leaders? Now they've gotten promoted, they're doing a great job, or hey, they got promoted, what happened?
I think wanting a job and being ready for a job are two different things. And in some companies, it's easier to give the job to the person who wants the job. And does that mean necessarily they've been prepared for the next level? So if I take my Ted Baker years, we obsessively prepared people for every next stage. So a Saturday person that's starting to enjoy retail and saying, I'd like to work here. I'd like to do a part-time role here beyond just working on Saturdays. I'd like to work full-time. So we would have training that worked you from that day one right the way through to senior, directors of retail, working in Asia, working as director of or vice president, as you would call it, of the US business, director of European retail. So we had training specific to every single step and stage of the way. And I just think most companies have what they would call entry-level training, and then they may have management training. What they do in the retail world is you often just work your way through having more and more responsibility without the training to go with it. And to be really harsh, when I've looked at some other companies' training, and I used to try and find training manuals from other companies, so much of it is generic and uninspiring and uninteresting. So what I created at TED was we had our own training manuals that we wrote that were intended to be fun, entertaining, funny, amusing. I would say that the gap, the question you asked me, the gap is actually level appropriate training at every step of the way, because there comes a point at which you stop being trained. And I don't think it should ever end. It should
Yeah.
never end.
I think that's fascinating that you say that, Chris, because you're right. A lot of companies are like, okay, well, now we're promoting you. Now you may get some training out of that, as opposed to constantly training people. And I remember that cross-functional training that, hey, I needed to know being in retail. I was in retail. I was afraid of retail because it was a different animal for me. And
Yeah.
to understand that I needed to do the accounting, that I, as a manager, I needed to know every aspect of that retail store and how to
Multi-skilled.
manage
Yeah.
everything. So I think that was, although it was scary for me, it was so important because there was moments that I had to do everything and nobody needed to start training me for that moment. I was already trained.
Yeah. As you were speaking, I was thought of another really important, I'd say, gap is a lack of understanding. And this is retail specific, but most companies have 7, 8 departments. Someone's in R&D, someone's finance, someone's selling. So the departments are roughly the same, no matter which category of business you're in. As you were speaking there, I was just thinking, knowing what the other departments are responsible for and what they
Yes.
do and their needs, we spent time on that too. So I'm just thinking that's a big gap too. You might raise up a level where
Mhm.
now that level means you spend more time discussing, in retail's case, you spend more time with speaking to the merchandising team than you did previously. But you don't really know what merchandising is, not really. So we would
Right.
train a retail manager, a store management, and regional management people to know more about all of the other departments and what they did. And we started that quite early. And
Mhm.
you learned more and you learned more as you went through. And then you spent time with those departments and with those teams. And gradually, it was a bit of a selling job for me to persuade the other directors that that was important. And then I said, it's not just important for my guys to know that about your teams. You should do the same with us. Come and
Mhm.
really understand
Mhm.
retail. I want to give you a quick example of where on a day this week, I was at a retail event, a dinner, and I'm very damning of some of my peers in the industry. People can sit around a table discussing what they should do in the shops, but
Mhm.
without knowing what they do in the shops. They should do this and they should do that and they should do the other. So I think that's where the gap is, knowing what each other and what each component brings to the table and joining it together.
I think that's fascinating because in my strategic planning years, I was a strategic master trainer. And most people, when I was working with the organization, it was the board members. The board members hadn't worked a life, a
No.
moment in that the life of that organization. Yet they were the ones making the decisions for the
Yeah.
organization. I'm like, bring me who is going to greet your customer? Is it the receptionist? Why is she not here? Right. Bring the receptionist, bring the person at the front door, bring the person who's delivering the product, whoever it is. That's important to have that cross section of individuals inside of the strategic planning retreat, the
Yeah.
training, the whatever. So that leads me to the next question. What are the major things that people, okay, we see the gap. What about what happens in the first 6 to 12 months? Because I know that can either make or break an organization.
So we had a system I think took care of that in that we buddied people. So someone that's been through the process already would help someone who hasn't been through the process already, and we'd try to be sensitive that the level of help required and the training required, it varies enormously because someone could have been doing their own self-learning, somebody could have just been quicker and faster and brighter about picking
Mhm.
things up. So trying to just say, we don't just go, well, it's cookie cutter. You get this because you're at this stage. Someone could be at this stage, that level, let's say level of management, but somebody could be higher or lower within that level right from the get-go. So having a buddy, someone that can then discuss, like, where are you at? What how do you know? What do you know about this? Which parts of the job do you do well? One of my favorite interview questions, Rocio, which I didn't do it to catch people out. I'd say to them, I have things that I'm naturally good at. I was good at from being a child, just spelling, English, language, words. That was my thing. Writing, I
Mhm.
love writing, love reading books. I
Me
wasn't so
too.
interested in maths and numbers. Maths and numbers was like, oh, I had to do it because you had to do it at school. So I'd say to people, what for you came easy and what for you was complicated and
Mhm.
difficult to understand. And
Mhm.
I'm not going to say, oh, when you say I'm not good at English, oh, well, that's no good. I don't want you for the job. I want to know just so we can build some rapport about it. And people found that question quite hard to answer initially. And then when they thought about it, then you start thinking, well, why is that easy for me? Well, it's because of the nature, the way that you've all been brought up, the school you went to, whatever those reasons are. But that then feeds into what do we need to give you, going back to the gap question, what do we need to give you to help you get to the next level? And someone who wasn't good at finance doesn't necessarily mean they couldn't run a store well. They
Mhm.
might have been the most brilliant salesperson, have the most brilliant humor, create the best atmosphere. And so if that was the case, we'd support them with maybe an assistant manager who had the bits that were a gap for them. Because you can't always close the gap. This is another important point. You can improve. I don't believe anyone can't improve. But, someone that wants to avoid being in the back office doing the paperwork is never going to start loving doing the paperwork, even if they have to do it. And equally, someone who's just really not comfortable speaking and serving and selling and working the customer, you can improve. There is some natural skills come to play here.
Definitely, especially if you want to go hide, right? I remember some people.
I want to pick on that, as you said about the people on the board. You can succeed and get to boardroom level without doing the actual job, but it's got to be better to have done it. I mean, I'm from that school. I work the shop floor relentlessly and still do. That's got to be important, and you've got to enjoy that. If you don't enjoy that, don't do that role, in my opinion.
And it really shows. I've seen some of the most amazing people in business. That's what they did. They started from the mailroom. They started from whatever. Even janitors. I've been fascinated that all of a sudden they're the CEO in their perfect timing and how that changes. Now, speaking of that, we're talking about how individuals, because I think this is a question that I get all the time when I'm in front of stages. People are like, well, my boss isn't paying for it. What are your thoughts on that? Is leadership something that we have to wait for a company, a leader to invest in us? Or what's your take? Do you prepare yourself on your own? What's the take on that? Because I know in the US, 93% of leaders say that they don't have the knowledge, skills, and abilities because the company didn't invest in them. Or if they didn't give them the opportunity to implement.
With being harsh here, I think that's weak, because you can absolutely go out and do it yourself. You can self-improve, but the best companies would spend the time and the money on leadership and training and development and so on. But I personally have always gone out and self-improved. There's a lovely book, and it's called "You Don't Know." I love this phrase. You don't know what you don't know that you don't know you don't know. And so I did a quiz once with my team, and I said, write down what you don't know that you don't know that you don't know that you don't know. So people started writing stuff down. I said, no. When they finished, it was a bit of a trick. When they finished, I said, no, that's stuff you don't know.
Right.
What about stuff you don't know? And they'd say, well, I can't tell you that. And I said, exactly. So there's a big gap. I mean, I think I'm pretty well read and pretty well versed in various management techniques and skills, and I've delivered training all over the world. But there'd be something out there that I don't know about that if I knew it would change my way of being. So we did a lot of work on trying to understand that. I said, one way you can find out what you don't know is if I ask you if you could do this, tell me 100 things Rocio. There'll be some things in there that I don't know that I've never even thought about before. And equally, I could do the same for you. So we had these sessions where people shared what they did know, and someone else would say, I don't know anything about that. I didn't even know about that. I didn't know that was a thing. And so you gradually can build up. And we had these fun sessions doing that. Now that happens. Like somebody in merchandising can think, well, why don't they do such and such in the stores? And it's because they don't know that bit of feedback that you want is important to you, because it means that you can make a decision. But if they then spend time working together, they can understand that. Same way in the stores. Well, why don't they put the stock straight out on a Wednesday? Well, on a Wednesday, we're tied to staffing because finance have cut our budgets, because we're going to be doing late night shopping. So some of the second shift don't come in till later. So if the boxes arrive on a Wednesday, so again, sharing all that information improves how you can connect with each other. And that's, again, where the skill gap comes for people when they go up the ranks. They start forgetting perhaps, well, they never did the tasks that they're now making decisions about.
Oh, wow. Beautifully put, because it gets to be frustrating, especially from the people that are doing the work day in and day out. They're like, okay, you don't get it, or the burnout that comes out of it, or, the pretending that I know what I don't know, and the pretending, the fake it till you make it. Because I heard that, my entire career, fake it till you make it. Well, I guess what burnout ends up being, or guess what an imposter syndrome is, faking it till you make it, right there. Speaking of that, in what high level situations are you seeing like these most concerning behaviors that are just happening as a result of not being prepared?
I think there's been an epidemic, and I'm speaking about the UK here, but I think it must be true of America too. And I've got former American colleagues who I know are going through this. There's quite a change, obviously, with everything that's going on with the world of tech and AI and the change in, I'm thinking retail particularly here again, but business is changing too. And we are doing things through tech. I'm not sure if this answers your question, but we're doing things through tech that seem, from a corporate and a head office perspective, to be a better way of doing it. But for the real reality of the real person, it's not the better way of doing it. I'm thinking particularly here of job applications. Job applications go through an algorithm now for most companies because they found a way of
AI, whatever.
systematizing. Yeah. So AI spots that you don't have a degree. I don't have a degree. For most of the jobs that I've looked at in the last several years, and I do a range of portfolio jobs and work, but I have applied for some actual jobs, and I can't get past tell me about your degree. Well, I don't have a degree. Why do I need a degree to run retail stores? I don't. But the system has that in as an absolute.
Mhm.
And some companies I've challenged. I've met the HR director and said, "Hold on, you've got an algorithm that prevents someone like me even getting through your first round." They said, well, the algorithm really works. No, it doesn't work because
It
you're
doesn't work.
cutting out, particularly in my industry of retail, where so many people started on the shop floor and didn't go to college or university. So I don't think I answered your question. Sorry, I think I kind of digressed onto
Oh,
something.
not a problem. I was looking at, in what high level pressured situations and what behaviors are you noticing in those particular situations that are a concern to you?
I think it is the Marie Antoinette line, isn't it? Let them eat cake. I think people get
Mhm.
divorced from reality, and they send out instructions and commands or new ways of doing things that just aren't tested on human beings and the real world. Because again, the algorithm says do it this way. I read a great quote about. I'm a big fan of AI. Just to preface what I'm about to say. But it said, if you ask AI, can I eat this poisonous mushroom? The AI may say, just ask that. Yes, you can. Yes, you can eat it. And then, but if you don't ask the next question, will I die? If you don't ask that, so you can go, oh, I'll eat it. Then, oh, if you eat that, you'll die. But the AI will answer the question. You can absolutely eat it. You can eat anything. You can eat, a ton of anything that will kill you. But you shouldn't. So it's the quality, and everyone's starting to understand this about AI. It's the quality of the prompting gets you the right answer. I think that applies. So I was trying to flip this back to the question. It applies to leadership. They're saying things or doing things that the people that they're managing maybe won't question because the boss has said it, and that's where it's all getting disconnected. So I do think there's a lack of, I don't know if you call it humanity, hiding behind systems. I mean, I was at they were a great company, software selling company, and there must have been 5 or 6 examples of things that they stated that I was saying that's not really how the real world works. You're
Mhm.
stating that like it's a need you're satisfying. I mean, there's so much software out there supposed to satisfy requirements and needs that don't exist. I won't mention them by name, but there's a couple of companies I'm thinking of that improve the way that you can have an intranet in a business that everyone can dial into so that the boss can see who's done their homework, who's done it. That sometimes takes away the humanity of we don't want to spend our time typing stuff into a computer. We'd rather he rang me up and said, how are you today? What
Where's the
happened in the
humanity? Like we've completely disconnected from our humanity. I'm hopping over to the next question right now. What are some of the capabilities? What capabilities do you believe that mid-level leaders need to strengthen in order to move from managing widgets or projects to leading people? Because I know in my experience, I have a lot of amazing, talented individuals in their field. They've done extraordinary with their projects. And the moment they go to lead people, something happens.
I think time spent together, I mean, I can't think of another way of describing it. Time spent together in a quality situation where you're not feeling that gap between the leader and the led. Because that happens so often. And you see leaders, cliche, there's a lot of great humor with this, with things like The Office, the English version of The Office, the comedy show, and the American version of it, where the leader thinks he's giving great leadership and he's being the funniest guy in the room and people are laughing at his jokes, and he's missing completely that behind his back they're mocking him and
Yes.
I think that's one of the biggest issues. I mean, I'm a big fan of doing 360s. So you get a 360, which is hard to get the teams to really feel they can be honest. But we tried hard to say, look, this is totally anonymous and get 360 feedback. Because what we all do is you get the 360 feedback and then you start to argue, oh, but they're saying that because of this. And they don't understand that I have to do this. So I think a real for the leaders to lay themselves out a little bit more to being open for criticism, because I won't say who, but I've worked for leaders that I didn't hugely respect, and that's not great. I wanted to respect them, but if they behave in ways that mean you don't want to respect them anymore, then how can they lead you? Because you're not listening to the leadership or you're not listening to the instruction and genuinely going, that's great. My leader has spoken and I really believe in it.
Mm.
I think that's probably I would call it a capability of being able to be more keep your humility as you become a leader. And there's ways of doing that. We did this at TED. We had training events where the leaders maybe didn't make fools of them, but they would be brought back into the team. So you're actually in the team again. And I found it very amusing, human behavior. You'd sometimes have one or two of them who found it really hard to be a team player again. And the situations we created meant you had to be a team player, but they would resist it because, oh no, I'm the boss. I should be over here with you two facilitators telling them what to do. And that's not the way, and then when they gradually broke that barrier down and joined the team again, they were like, that wasn't great advice for the leader. And then you can relearn the lessons of being in the team again. So I think humility, I mean, hubris brings companies down. It brought my old company down, and it brings companies down around the world. Believing in your own hype and believing that you're omnipotent and you're all powerful. And we can go into politics if you want, but it would be true. Political leaders and leaders the world over tend to be brought down, by their own behavior and their own lack of humility. I think I've gone around the houses, Rocio, but I that sounds. I want to focus on that being a real human trait. Yeah. Keep your humility. I'm very big-headed about who I am and what I've achieved. At the same time, I mock it. I mock it. I take the Mickey out of myself. I self-deprecate a lot. Because it's important. So just remember who you really are. I'm a kid that came from a suburban town in England, South Coast. It wasn't London, it wasn't glamour, and so I remember where I started.
Oh, no, I love that, Chris. And I think one of the most important things that I can take away from this conversation is even dealing with our own imposter syndrome, dealing with whatever it is that we haven't healed. If we don't like hearing feedback, or we feel like somebody's rejecting us or whatever. It's not about us personally. They're simply giving us feedback to let us know. I believe that people that I've had the privilege to work with all over the world, I have made me even better communicators. I'm like, what is it that I'm missing? What piece of information didn't I give them that is leading them to say what they're saying? So I get curious. I love bringing curiosity. And speaking of that, what are your 3 tips that you would like people to take away from this conversation as they're going into the next level of leadership, or maybe even leading their leaders? What would you like for them to take with them?
If I go back 2 steps, you said to me about the point of what to prepare for the next stage, or perhaps companies that haven't invested in you and they feel let down by that. So my phrase I used to live by, and I still live by it today, is don't wait for yourself. So my first tip for everybody listening to this would be don't wait for yourself. You can go and take command of, if you need to learn more about, let's say it's finance. You've got to learn more about finance in this new role that you've taken on that's a higher role than you're in before. Don't wait for somebody somewhere to magically appear like a genie and show you the world. Go and get a book on finance. Go and do a finance for non-finance managers. Do it yourself. And that would cover any type of learning in any type of new role. And then the other part of don't wait for yourself is don't wait for the promotion to do it. Do it so that you're ready for when the promotion comes around, and do it so that the leadership opportunity will come to you, because other leaders in the business will go, well, look at that person there. Their level's improved on this, and this category of what we're trying to learn and achieve. And then on top of that, be demanding. So the next tip would be demanding of your leader, your boss, your immediate line manager. Don't let them get away with not showing you everything that they know and trying to learn more. I mean, people sometimes, it's almost like they'll protect their information. I won't show Rocio this, because if I show her, she's bright.
She'll take over my dog.
She'll take over, but she'll run past me. So I think in the right way, without upsetting them, you should be demanding of the bosses, so you can get ahead that way. And the third thing was, I'd like to get information about developing myself and developing my teams from as wide a variety of sources as possible. So, I worked in retail, but, it could be sports, it could be banking, it could be gyms, gymnasium, fitness, it could be supermarkets. You steal ways of doing things. Don't just limit it to the field that you're in, because a great way of doing something, or a great idea for developing and training people, can come from somewhere completely left field. So when I came up with ideas for training, I'd pick it from all sorts of random books and sources. Sometimes it'd be something in a great novel that really struck me. To give you an example of that, Cool Hand Luke, the movie with Paul Newman. He's a jailbird. He goes to prison, and he does stuff every day to kind of make the jail time kind of go faster and to make his life more fun. It's a very famous movie. And he comes up with the egg challenge. And basically he has to eat 50 eggs in a short amount of time, and everyone's laying bets on whether he can eat the eggs. So that's just one thing that he does to entertain himself. But the following day, he's there tarmacking a road, and he gets the guys, he goes around whispering to everybody, all the other convicts on the chain gang, let's tarmac this road faster than it's ever been done before. Like, this is the work like crazy to tarmac the road, run up and down, throw more asphalt down, all it flat. They do all that. And one of the guy goes, what do we do now? And he just leans back. They called it a shit-face grin. He has a shit-face grin, Paul Newman, smiles, he goes, we do this. And it just upsets the guards. Now, again, that might sound like a crazy thing, but I explain that Paul Newman moment in the Cool Hand Luke movie to people and say, sometimes we just do it because that's the thing to do. You don't have to have a reason for everything. Do you know what I mean? So I would do crazy things just to upset the apple cart and entertain my guys, just because it was a fun thing to do.
I love that, Chris. And I think at the end of the day, when we're looking at the things that we can do, that's one of the things that I use for myself. What can I change today? What can I do differently? If I'm standing, do I need to be sitting? If I'm sitting, do I need to be walking around? What is it that I need to do to change things? How do I do it faster? How do I do it slower? How do I be more conscious, even down to eating my own food, right? And it's about what I'm hearing, that there's a pattern about change, that you can learn from anything and everyone on how to do things. And the more that we expand the mind, the easier life becomes, because we can draw from everything. Chris, you're amazing. Thank you for being here today. Thank you for your wisdom. I'm looking forward to having you here in the future as well. Have you again.
Thank you very much. I've enjoyed it. It's been good to have a chat.
Thank you so much. And to our listeners, our viewers, what an amazing opportunity for us to listen to this again. There's so many different opportunities for us to connect, listen to this podcast over and over again. There may be some things that didn't quite sink in the first time that we make different connections for. So do 3 things that move you forward. Until the next time, keep living your version of a happy, healthy, and wealthy life.